Every country is something more than the sum of its geographical parts. It is also the mold in which men's beliefs and habits harden into lasting shape. From their beginnings, the Dutch have had a belief in freedom, a habit of fighting for it. When the Spanish overran them in the 16th century, they suffered for their religious beliefs. Because they had suffered themselves, they developed a peculiar sensitivity to other people's pain. When the Jews of Spain and Portugal, a few years later, sought refuge here, they opened their doors, granted them full citizenship and a proud place in the cultural and business life of the country. Here also the Pilgrims, driven from England for their beliefs, found refuge before sailing for the New World. Now, 3 centuries later, it was about to happen again. In Germany, the terror had begun, and already thousands of German Jews had found sanctuary in Holland. Among them was a man named Otto Frank, who had fled to Amsterdam with his wife and 2 little girls. He settled in a sunny suburb known as the Merwede Plain. But there was to be no sanctuary, even here. On a May morning in 1940, a morning that was bright with sun and tulips, the invasion of Holland by the Nazis began.
Eternal Light, the NBC television religious program, is produced by the Jewish Theological Seminary of America in association with the National Broadcasting Company. The Legacy of Anne, filmed in Holland, written by Virginia Mason.
At first there was an air of unreality about the invasion. It was as if a bolt of lightning had struck the people. In a state of shock, they went about their ordinary life. Trains ran, ships were loaded and unloaded, meals were cooked, children went to school. But at the core of daily life, there was a paralyzing sense of horror and unbelief. The main body of the army capitulated. The Queen and her ministers fled to England. In Berlin, the war against Holland was considered won. Of course, there were the Jews. A solution must be found for the Jews, some 140,000 of them. Over 2/3 of them lived in Amsterdam. The first anti-Jewish edicts were issued in the autumn of 1940. These edicts were against the Dutch Constitution. There was a public outcry from university professors and churchmen. Early in 1941, the roundup of Jews began. The Jews fought back. 400 men and young boys were deported to the Mauthausen concentration camp in Germany. All died there. But the Nazis made one mistake. They were blind to the salient fact of Dutch temperament. Slow to be aroused. A Dutchman once aroused will stand his ground with extraordinary courage and stubbornness. He struck. The strike began with the Amsterdam dock workers. Shipyards were deserted. Cranes might have been painted against the sky. From the docks it spread. Trolleys stopped. Utilities went dead. In the city of Utrecht, transport and industry were paralyzed. In Hilversum, 2,000 workers walked out at an armament plant. For 3 days, workers and police fought in hand-to-hand combat. Not until martial law, with threats of the death penalty, was established, did the fighting end. 12 men lay dead in the streets. Near the old Jewish Portuguese synagogue, the dock worker statue commemorates the 12 men killed during the strike. It is also a memorial to the thousands of others who risked their lives to save their Jewish neighbors. The strike was broken, but not the temper of the people. Protest went underground. Legendary today are the exploits and daring of the men of the underground. Jews and Christians who fought side by side to free Holland from the Nazis. In the suburb of Merwedeplain, the Frank family still clung to a margin of safety. Margot and Anne Frank attended the Montessori School, now renamed the Anne Frank School. Except for the name, the school has changed little since Anne's time. All children at Montessori are cherished, treated with respect. Anne was no different from any other child. Talkative, sensitive, bright. There was then no special mark. The flight from Germany seems to have left her untouched by fear. Her first grade teacher remembers that she liked to make up stories, even then, jolly stories, and that she insisted over and over that she would be a famous writer when she grew up. The headmistress during Anne's time was Mrs. Kuperus. She recalls Anne vividly.
Anne Frank is 6 jaar hier op de lagere school geweest. Het was een prettige...
Anne Frank had been at the grammar school for 6 years. She was a nice pupil. She liked to compose short stories and do pleasant things in class. When the children put on little plays, Anne was one of the first to join in. She liked to play the principal character. Her imagination, it was very great. I liked her very much. In our neighborhood, many Jewish families lived at that time. They were strongly attracted to progressive education. They wanted their children to be free, to explore, to fulfill themselves, each in his own special way. For every child, you know, is special. But here, we never thought our children as Jewish or non-Jewish. They were simply children. Some short, some tall, some fair, some dark, like Anne. Those years, we knew that bad things were happening in Germany. We knew that Anne's family and many others had had to leave. But we never believed that it could happen to us. It was a happy time, innocent. And we teachers, we were as innocent as the children. Any one of the children you see here today, they could have been Anne. In the 6th grade, Anne was in Mr. Van Gelder's class. It was her last year.
Ze was een vlijtige en prettige leerling.
She was always interested in the things she did, and though she liked to chatter, it was never so that I had to stop her or make a remark. She learned everything quite fast, and she was really interested in the things she learned and did. She was sociable with the other children and always willing to help. Later, Anne would write in her diary remembering that last year at Montessori, the innocence, the mischief, the discovery, the hope.
When we were in normal life, everything was tremendous. I could tell about our school life for hours, about our pranks, about the boys in my class.
Actually, these happy days took place after the invasion of Holland by the Nazis. The year was 1941. The menace was all around and about her. But as long as they could, her parents and her teachers drew a magic circle around her. It was true of all the Jewish children. She often spoke about her father. She said that on special occasions like birthdays, he made up poems, and so did she. I have never read them, but I have faith they must have been very, very nice poems. She was a child who had much feeling, very much feeling.
covers all the bare facts of Anne's 6 years at Montessori. Number of days absent, number of days present, and so forth. But it does not tell us that she was a chatterbox, that as she entered adolescence, she was a little boy-struck, that she was crazy about movie stars and badminton and strawberry ice cream. In short, that she was like 1,000 other teenagers, with one exception. Her future had already been drawn up in a blueprint of terror. Name of student, Anne Frank. Address, Mervedeplain 67. Born June 12, 1929. The magic circle was broken. On September 27, 1941, Anne was forced to leave to go to school only with Jews. The Franks continued to live in the Mervedeplain, yet one by one, the Jews of Amsterdam were disappearing. One last fleeting glimpse of Anne. A neighbor was getting married. She leans out of the window to watch. The camera swings round, and by accident we have 10 seconds of her brief life recorded forever. June 12, 1942. Her 13th birthday. Her father stopped in at Blankevoort's bookshop to buy a present.
It's an odd idea for someone like me to keep a diary. It seems to me that neither I, nor for that matter anyone else, will be interested in the unbosomings of a 13-year-old schoolgirl. I hope I shall be able to confide in you completely, and I hope you will be a great support and comfort to me.
It was as if for a moment her sun had darkened and she saw ahead. The time had come. Less than 1 month after Anne made her first entry in her red and white checkered diary, the Franks went into hiding.
When we arrived at the Prinsengracht, Miep took us quickly upstairs and into the secret annex. She left us, and we were alone.
Their hiding place for 2 years, the rooms above the spice factory Otto Frank had once owned. From now on, 8 people would share this hiding place. The Franks, Otto and Edith, Margot and Anne, Mr. and Mrs. Van Daan and their son Peter, and Mr. Dussel. All of their lives would rest solely in the hands of the factory workers downstairs. All knew the penalty for hiding a Jew: imprisonment, even death. Why did they do it? None of them were heroes. They simply did what thousands of other Hollanders were doing. The Franks were their friends. They had no choice. The walls of Anne's room speak for themselves. There are photographs of her beloved movie stars. Rayma Land, Simone Simon, Diana Durbin, Ginger Rogers. Designs for dresses she could imagine herself wearing. An etching of a head of Leonardo da Vinci. A print of a Rembrandt. A postcard of a street scene in Jerusalem. In these sunless rooms, life was not only frightening, it was cramped, monotonous. But Anne made up a list of rules that mocked the tragedy of their real situation.
No pets, salt-free diet, all holidays suspended until further notice.
In this narrow room lived young Peter Van Daan, the only person Anne's age to share her prison. Inevitably, they would be there.
About Peter, I used to think him stupid and dull. Now he is neither, just very nice. His hair is terrific, a dense brown forest of curls, blue-gray eyes. Every morning I go up to the attic where Peter works to blow the stuffy air out of my lungs. I look at the blue tree. We miss so much here, so very much, and for so long now. But as long as this exists, and I may live to see it, I cannot be unhappy. When I look outside, right into the depth of nature and God, then I am happy, really happy. Daddy, Mummy, and Margot can't get used to the sound of the Westerbork clock, which tells us the time every quarter of an hour. I can. I loved it from the start, and especially at night. It is like a faithful friend.
Every evening, the chiming of the clock also told them it was time to listen to the BBC broadcast. As the second year began, hope grew. Otto Frank had tacked a map on the wall depicting the movement of Allied troops. As he moved his pins across France toward Holland, Anne and the others began to feel lighthearted.
We all have invasion fever. Margot says I may be able to go back to school this fall.
Then it happened. What they had almost ceased to dread. It was August 1944, mid-morning. The Gestapo came without fanfare. No screaming brakes, no whining sirens. There was not a sound from anyone. No outcry, no screams, no pleading. In absolute quiet they stood as the secret annex was ransacked and they were put under arrest. The Franks were only an infinitesimal part of the destruction of European Jewry. From Holland alone, 5,000 Jews went to Theresienstadt. 4,000 to Bergen-Belsen. 60,000 to Auschwitz. First, the Jews were rounded up for registration, given a number. After registration, they were locked up in the Dutch playhouse to await deportation. Only a shell of the playhouse remains. It is now a memorial. Here, thousands were jammed in together. Men, women, little children. Hundreds of them died of disease, suffocation, panic, before they could be officially exterminated. In the grassy courtyard, a stark stone monument is dedicated to those who were deported from here, 1940-1945. Through the memorial entrance in a small interior court, the eternal light burns with this Hebrew message. The light of the Lord is the soul of mankind. The Franks and the others in the secret annex were sent to Westerbork in northern Holland. Like most other Dutch Jews, they believed Westerbork to be simply a detention camp. This was a lie. Westerbork was a way station on the road to death. Otto Frank remembers that on the train ride there, Anne kept her nose pressed against the window pane. She was jubilant at being free, at seeing blue sky and telephone poles whirl by. These are actual scenes of the Westerbork camp, taken by the Gestapo. They are now preserved in the archives of the Netherlands Film Museum and known as the Westerbork Transport. Left Westerbork for death camps in Germany and Eastern Europe. The Franks were aboard one of the last trains to leave. Another week would have made the difference between life and death. In Bergen-Belsen. Their mother, Edith Frank, died in Auschwitz. Mr. Dussel died in Neuengamme camp. Mr. Van Daan was gassed at Auschwitz. Young Peter was marched away from Auschwitz by SS troops fleeing the Russians and was never seen again. Mrs. Van Daan died where or how, no one knows. Only Otto Frank came back. During the nightmare Nazi years, thousands of acts of supreme courage went unrecorded. Others have been memorialized. Just outside the Westerbork camp limits is this monument of 10 young Dutchmen who died in an attempt to storm the camp and liberate the Jews inside. deportation of Holland, more than 20,000 Jews were hidden by their Christian neighbors. All were hidden with the full knowledge that to do so meant arrest and deportation, sometimes death. One who survived is Rabbi Soetendorp of the liberal synagogue of Amsterdam. With his young wife, Rabbi Soetendorp was hidden by a Dutch farmer. The farmer had a wife and 6 children, and he lived with the constant dread that the Gestapo would come and arrest them all. Yet this simple farmer felt he had no choice. It was his God-given duty to try to save as many Jews as possible. Rabbi Soetendorp recalls this heroic Dutchman.
You know, if I saw him standing there in the land, the threshold of his farmhouse, then I thought of the Jewish saying that 36 people are enough to save the world. And another saying from the Talmud that tells us that if somebody is saving one soul, he is the man who saves the whole world. And really, that was what those people did. They were the saviors. They couldn't do anything else. They did it not because of heroism, but because they were fighting the war of the Lord against all the atrocity and against all the cruelty that ever exists in the world. The materialism that will ever get the upper hand in the world. Those people showed us a way to a new understanding, to a new life. I think that there always will be more people who are doing what he did and fighting this war of the Lord against the evil forces in the world. They finally will conquer the world and will establish God's kingdom on earth. You know, the diary of Anne Frank, that is said, one day the good will conquer everything. I still believe in the good that will come to the world. She believed it, so do I.
A gray stone memorial lists the names of all the members of the liberal synagogue who were deported from Holland and never returned. Among them the names of Edith, Margot, and Anne Frank. We single them out, not because their suffering was any greater than that of the other 8 million who are now a part of the dust of Europe, but because the young girl, Anne, left a written record that speaks not only for herself, but for all who suffered and perished, indeed, for all mankind.
I see the world gradually turning into a wilderness. I hear the approaching thunder that will destroy us. I can feel the suffering of millions. And yet, if I look up into the heavens, I think that this cruelty too will end, and peace and tranquility will return again.
When Otto Frank made his way back from Auschwitz to Amsterdam, he learned for the first time that his wife and daughters were dead. All of his past was wiped clean, except for one thing. Miep had kept for him something the Gestapo had thrown away as rubbish when they ransacked the secret annex.
I knew that Anna wrote a diary. She spoke about her diary. She left her diary with me at night in a briefcase next to my bed. I had promised her never to look in. I never did. When I returned, and after I had the news that my children would not come back, Miep gave me the diary, which had been saved by, I should say, a miracle. It took me a very long time to read it. And I must say, I was very much surprised about the deep thoughts Anna had, her seriousness especially her self-criticism. It was quite a different Anna I had known as my daughter. She never really showed this kind of inner feeling. She talked about many things, we criticized many things, but what really their feelings were, I only could see from the diary. And my conclusion is, as I had been in very, very good terms with Anna, that most parents don't know really their children. And so I know, too, that in reading the diary, parents and teachers will learn a lot. To build up a future, you have to know the past. You see, I'm pretty old now, but I am not a bitter man. Young people write to me, asking questions. Many are writing a diary themselves, calling their diary Anna's diary. They write to Anna as Anna wrote to Kitty. And so, especially in the time of adolescence, they get a lot of confidence and hope for their lives in reading about Anna and her experiences.
I want to go on living even after my death, and therefore I am grateful to God for giving me this gift of writing, of expressing all that is in me.
If you would like a copy of today's script, please send your name and address with 25 cents to cover the cost of postage in Hamburger, 3080 Broadway, New York, New York 10027. The Eternal Light was brought to you in association with the Jewish Theological Seminary of America. This has been another film production of the NBC Religious Programs Unit. Your announcer is Jerry Damon.